Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Patsy Widakuswara. I'm White House Bureau Chief for Voice of America and lead plaintiffs in Widakuswara v. Lake. These are my co-plaintiffs, Jessica Jurit, Press Freedom Desk Editor, and Kate Neefer, Director of Strategy at the Europe AGM. In our lawsuit, there's also 4 John Does and 4 labor unions, as well as the Reporters Without Borders, and the 3 of us here are representing them. Before we take your questions, we would like to underline again that in today's hearing, our lawyers argue that the defendants have not complied with Judge Royce Lamberth's preliminary injunction that he gave out in April. And we asked the government, the defendant, to provide a plan as to what is it that they're going to do with that, and what is it that they're going to do with the money that Congress has appropriated for us, the $260 million, which is our budget. And one of the points of contention in today's hearing, as you mentioned, was whether or not President Donald Trump's speech on the U.S. action against Iran was broadcast, as the defendant Kari Lake slings. Let me tell you again, I have spoken with my Farsi colleagues, several of them, and they said that it was not broadcast live on television with Farsi translation. It was streamed on social media. However, even before a minute was up, the audio cut out. So we have still a video of President Trump speaking with no sound coming out of his mouth as of this morning. And the video of the speech itself was not uploaded on VOA's website until hours later. Now, under normal operations, had we not all been put on administrative leave in mid-March, the president's speech would have been broadcast by all language services on multiple platforms, including with simultaneous translations in at least 10 languages. Instead, our Persian colleagues described their coverage that day as a catastrophic failure due to Lake's removal of the colleagues needed to support such a broadcast, including a TV director and assistant director. No other VOA language services broadcast the president's speech. And just to remind you, last month, US AGM fired more than 500 contractors, and on Friday, sent hundreds of reduction in force notices to hundreds of full-time employees, including myself and Jessica and Kate, as well as dozens of our Persian colleagues. So they got rid of us, they realized they need us, they scrambled to bring us back, and of course the result is that they made a disaster out of the president's speech. Now, as some of you may know, on Wednesday, defendant Kari Lake is set to appear as the only witness at the hearing of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, led by Representative Brian Mast, an ally of the president. And the title of the hearing is Spies, Lies, and Mismanagement, examining the U.S. agency for global media's downfall. From the title, it's clear that the hearing is designed to paint us as such. We dispute this characterization. And if you have any questions about those allegations, we will also try to address them the same way that we conduct our journalism, with transparency and credibility. We thank you, and we'll take your questions.
Scott Over from the Washington Post. Thanks for knowing this. Were you heartened by the judge's attitude, demeanor, comments from the bench today, even though he didn't rule?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's just like, the judge is really pushing for information. I think as our lawyer pointed out, this has been a chaotic plan to reduce this to a statutory minimum, and they're not providing the information that he asked for. I feel confident that our judge and our lawyers did press to get to information in a due process that us and our colleagues really deserve. We did that.
Yeah, I also feel I feel from the very beginning, from the first time that we went into court, now with the court in New York in end of April, we have seen how wheels of justice work in this country, and we feel very confident with that. And again, in today's hearing, we feel they can move.
Do you feel confident that the judge will restore VOA staff whenever the crime is right, next couple of weeks?
Well, we certainly hope so, but it doesn't really look possible at this point. What do you think?
I mean, I think the judge really understands what VOA was set up to do for 83 years. And he said that again today. Yeah, how can you be Voice of America if you don't have a voice in these regions? And I think that really peaked to the heart of it. That they scrambled to bring people back to cover a crisis in Iran. As they talked today, the government lawyer, we'll just bring people back on an ad hoc basis. that doesn't work in GEMS. There are people in Russia, Myanmar, in countries that are at war that are relying on our broadcasts and have been relying on our broadcasts for 83 years to know what's happening. And that has got, and there's 2 minutes or 5 minutes of radio, no TV, 20 plus stories a week. It's such a reduction of what we were doing and what we can do, how effective we can be. Before March 14th, it was more than 2,000 broadcasting hours a week, and now it's less than 2. And I think that's just the stark view. We're losing America's voice, this global superpower voice, at a very vital time of the world right now.
And we're losing the trust of our audience. I mean, we cannot keep the trust of 360 million weekly global audience if we have been silent for the past 3 months as we have been. And, just to put a point on what Jessica mentioned, what the defendant's lawyer said, that they want to bring us on an as-needed basis on contract. Well, that's like hiring a meteorologist only when it rains, calling them in after it rains, because it doesn't work for journalism. It doesn't work for any profession. Any other questions? We're journalists, so we know.
I can ask Melissa.
Yeah.
What are you hoping members of Congress ask on Wednesday's hearing, given that you kind of rebut the premise of the hearing's title? What are you hoping that members to ask Kari Lake, Congress?
Yeah, we certainly hope they ask a lot of questions, and a lot of questions that will reveal the truth. Because what we don't want this hearing to be is to be something that's just cherry picking on issues that they alleged us to have. And, just to remind everyone, like, what news organization has not made a mistake, for example. The difference is that when we do make mistakes, we own up to it, we are transparent with it, and we even write about it. I mean, I don't know if Kate wants to mention about the other issues.
Yeah, so like one thing that I think it really bears Congress's attention is, what is your plan? What is your plan to carry out the activities that the appropriation was designed to support? And I think that's one of the things that our lawyers argued really strongly in there, was that appropriations are laws, right? Appropriations are Congress's sense of what this organization should be doing. And they're not in compliance with the appropriation in any number of ways that our lawyers laid out. And I hope that Congress will take the opportunity to really ask those questions, to say, like, we gave you X amount of money to do the following things. We put in very specific requirements about how you need to notify us if you're going to change those things, that we expect you to do broadcast into North Korea, that we expect to hear what you're doing in Latin America, that we expect you to broadcast to the world. I hope they will press her on her plan to comply with those requirements, because they're laws.
And we expect them to ask the defendant, well, not the defendant in this case, ask Kari Lake and USAGM to explain, to have some accountability for what they have done. They have destroyed the work of thousands of journalists over 83 years to build a brand that is trusted around the world by hundreds of millions of people. Many of these journalists are here today, and this is our life's work here. So we would like Congress to ask Kari Lake, what have you done? And what have you gained from this exercise? Have you saved the American people money? Have you forwarded the American people's interests? In what universe is the U.S. interest served by not having a voice in the global information space at a time when our adversaries, Russia, China, Iran, are pushing out their anti-American propaganda? So that's the questions that I would like to hear on this heroes.
My last question, the clock is ticking on J1 visa holders that were let go from Voice of America. My understanding is that they have until the end of this month to either figure out some sort of solution to stay in the country or leave, and in many cases go back to home countries that could be dangerous for them. What is the plan to help them avert that scenario? Is there any legal protection that the judge could offer? Is there anything from the congressional hearing that we should be expecting? Anything on that?
I mean, I think we want to be careful about how much information we share about some people's personal decisions and personal information, especially if there is a chance that they will be sent back to these hostile regimes. I can tell you that we are working with our colleagues to try to help them make plans, especially for those who could be returned somewhere dangerous.
Obviously, if the judge reinstated them and restored their visas, that would be a great outcome. I'm not sure how likely that is. And I do think some people are making plans to return home, unfortunately. And there's been a lot of focus on the people who will be at risk if they have to go back, as there should be, because it's an absolutely appalling situation. But I think it's also important to note that people who probably can safely go back, this is still enormously disruptive to their lives. Like, people lost their jobs, they lost visas that were supposed to continue for a number of years. A lot of them lost a pretty good path to a green card that they were counting on and that they were promised when they were hired. They're pulling their kids out of school, they're having to break apartment leases, pay termination fees, sell property. Like, this is enormously disruptive to people's lives, and there's absolutely no reason it needed to happen.
So, Patsy, what do you expect from the hearing coming this Thursday from the Congress? So far, we haven't seen much of the reaction from the Congress. So what do you expect from the hearing coming this Thursday?
Yeah, the hearing is on Wednesday.
Wednesday.
And we hope that Congress asks all the right questions and not just the questions that was sort of like designed to paint us in this negative light, because that's what the name of the hearing is: spies, lies, and mismanagement. We can also point out their own mismanagement currently. I mean, how is the fact that canceling a bunch of satellite contracts, for example, and then scrambling to get them back on because we have to air the president's speech 2 days ago. How is that not mismanagement? So there's a lot of things that we would like we would like lawmakers to ask, and certainly, please get as much transparency from us as possible, because we are not ashamed of our work. We are very proud of what we put out. We are very proud of our work, and we are very proud of our mission. So I really hope that hearing can also spotlight that part of it and not just the negative aspect that some lawmakers perhaps might want to cherry pick.
That's it. I've been hearing info about our affiliates media or network out there in other countries who are now signed with Russian state media or Chinese state media. Can you elaborate more about that and what impact it could make on our audience out there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is something that people forget. VOA has 3,500 radio, television, and digital affiliates around the world. And we didn't say anything to them when suddenly we provide no more content to them back in mid-March. So these affiliates, they're not just going to stay silent and wait for us to come back. No, they will need to fill in their programming. And what they have done is they've reached out. What they have done, if they filled the space that we've left, the vacuum that we've left with programming from RT, programming from CGTN. We see this in a lot of Latin American affiliates. We have a former colleague here who can probably explain to you more about that if you're interested. We see this also in our affiliates in Asia. So this is truly, truly shooting ourselves in the foot by allowing this vacuum of information to be filled by our adversaries.
Ricardo saying from the yearly Kurdish service. Our Kurdish service has been broadcasting for over 30 years to more than 30 million Kurds in Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Iran. And this is an area actually probably held where information is really restricted. With what's happened right now in Iran, the version of news people in the region get is from Turkey, where this is portrayed as an imperialist movement by the United States and Israel. Iran, we know what it is like, and in Iraq, it's a proxy of Iran. The same version of storytelling. Syria is saying close to Turkey. So, the version of American storytelling is missing. My question to you guys, you follow your conversation is with the leadership. When they decide to fire people and bring back people from Persian service, is anyone consulted from the leadership? How are these decisions made?
To be clear, leadership isn't us, it beats us.
Yeah. Leadership is not speaking with us. And as I understand leadership, when you say leadership, you mean like Kerry Lake and USAGM?
Right, or Mike. I mean,
They're not consulting with Mike.
They're not consulting.
Absolutely not. Mike is on administrative. Yeah.
So we had no idea how they make those decisions. So
No. No.
I think that's something they should explain to the judge.
Jessica wants handy.
And I think that is a point. I mean, the judge pointed that out today, that they need, like, they're not giving a plan. There isn't a plan. Mike is the rightfully appointing director of Voice of America, but he's, I believe, still being paid, still hasn't received the RIF notice, but no one's consulting him and needed, well, we're all still working, tried to reach out and tried to smooth over this process. But no one understands. And I think it really shows, as you explain with the Kurdish service. I mean, the Kurds, one of the largest sort of groups that are spread across so many regions, all fighting for independence, that it shows such a narrow point of view that we keep the Farsi service, but we ignore everyone else in the region who have been relying on you for 30 years for this information. And I think that was being VOA's strength. We speak to people in their own language, not just 4 languages, 49 languages. And it really brings authenticity and trust and credibility. And we're ceding that space to people who have a very different worldview than the ideals of press freedom and democracy that the US upholds.
Yeah. And I want to point out, in Iran, or not Persians, we have more than 10 million Kurds.
Yeah.
Who's going to solve on this point?
And Azeris. Yeah. And Azeris, and also, all the other languages bordering around, like the Turks, right? Like the Turkic people need information. The Azerbaijanis, like in Daryan Pashto as well. Like there's you can't, again, like it's this idea of bringing people back on an as needed basis on contract. It's preposterous, right? Like you can't call your traffic reporter after an accident. Like you have to have eyes and ears. Like our audience need us to be there to tell them in times of war and in times of peace, before, during, and after crisis.
And it's also telling America's story. We're not just here for the crisis. It's all of the other work that we do, helping people understand how the US operates.
Yeah.
So it's not always just crisis reporting, breaking news, but it's helping people understand this amazing country, all the ideas that make America America. And that's very powerful. That's why we are such a powerful form of power. And that's just being thrown away. 83 years of building trust and credibility and a legacy just got.
Yeah. I mean, again, I just want to point out, it's not all about war and crisis reporting. I have an Indonesian colleague over there who's busy with his phone, but one of the programs that he did was this program called Small But Important. And it's just a very simple program about following Americans and what to do if they get a parking ticket, for example. How do you pay your parking ticket? Oh, you go to the DMV or you pay online. It shows you how a rule-abiding society works, and that is an important message to send out to the rest of the world. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, the role of Voice of America in how people learn English, right? Because everybody talks about the other services, and they are not talking about the native language of the United States, which is spoken around the world. And, Africa, the service uses English for Africa, French for Africa. So the component of the English language, right? Why should we also focus on allowing that to thrive and come back this year?
No, yeah, absolutely. We have a huge audience for English to Africa, English to Asia. And yeah, I mean, there's English-speaking people all over the world. Hindi watam tidra.
And I think pretty much everyone who's ever worked at VOA or at USAGM has been in a taxi or an Uber and has heard from somebody either, I listen to VOA in my language in my country and thank you so much, and here are my various critiques of the programming and my favorite hosts and all of that, or I learned English from VOA. Like everyone who has worked there has met someone who learned English from VOA all over the world.
Sure. Yep. I just want to emphasize a couple of things that occurred in this federal district courtroom today, where Judge Royce Lamberth said to the government attorney, there's an outstanding injunction that he's issued, which they are not clearly implying, obeying. And the second thing, a quote from the judge was, what would be the purpose of the Voice of America if there is no voice? Noting directly, there's no television, there's really no radio, except that
token 5 minutes a day in Dari and Pashto over shortwave radio. What the government has set up right now, contending that they're meeting a statutory minimum, as the plaintiff said in one of their latest briefs to the court, it's a Potemkin village.
That's right. If there's nothing else, thank you so much, you guys, for time. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I was wondering. So I'm with the Franco-German television Arte, A-R-T, not R-T. Just yeah, no, I was wondering if it ever happened that like such a major moment in American foreign relations as what happened this weekend has happened and VOA was not covering.
Not in the past 83 years. Not in the past 83 years. And again, you know, normally, under normal circumstances, if we were all working, we would all be scrambling, focus on this subject, right? I mean, from the White House, I'll certainly be covering what the president is doing. And not only that, also giving context such as, does the president need to consult with Congress before striking another country? Like giving it context, right? And also, again, like I said, more than 10 language services would have aired this with simultaneous translation. That did not happen even with the Farsi service on Saturday, contrary to what the defendant said.
On a more personal touch, I'm interested in how each of you, you know, have lived this, you know, such like breaking news for America and you guys being out of it.
Yeah. It was a difficult day. I mean, I usually wake up in the morning and then I think about what my coverage is going to be that day. And it wasn't just about what happened on Friday or Saturday. It's not just about the Iran crisis. So many news, right? For example, like the riots in Los Angeles. That would have been such a great opportunity for us to explain how federalism works in the United States. Instead, what's happening right now is people all over the world are hearing RT and CGTN describing about the riots on the street in the United States. So that's an opportunity that's missing. And for me on a personal level as a journalist, because I love my job and not just my job as a journalist, but as a VOA White House correspondent, it is gut-wrenching. And every day I wake up and I can't cover the news the way you have. Maybe Jessica has.
Exactly the same. It's just a frustration. It goes against every instinct as a journalist. Many of us with my decades of experience, but you're cut out of some of the biggest stories in the world right now. I think for my team, we cover press freedom. So in any of these stories of Iran or the riots, we're looking at what's happening to media, what media are being allowed to talk or not talk about. And we're also missing out being able to report on what's happening to some of our colleagues. Since we were put on administrative leave, one of our colleagues, a contributor in Azerbaijan, has been taken into prison. She's been beaten badly. She's still held in custody. She is the 13th person who is being held overseas. We would have been able to report on that and raise the profile of in case. Activists and people connected with her case say that they strongly believe that Azerbaijan is emboldened to act because VOA doesn't exist anymore. And not only do we not exist, but the team who historically was reported on the dangers that our own journalists face are cut out of the picture. We also can't report on the biggies. We had two of our RFERL journalists, one from Belarus and one from Russian-occupied Crimea, finally released with RFE pointing out that this was thanks to good Donald Trump administration. We couldn't report on that either. And it's incredibly frustrating. It goes against every instinct of the journalist to be outside the story.
Do you have contributors in Iran who are now in the context that we know in danger?
I believe not, that.
Yeah, so VOA has always had a hard time operating inside Iran because the regime hates what we're doing so much. But there are contributors in neighboring countries, and those neighboring countries are under very, very strong Iranian influence. So if people are in Turkey, Iraq, elsewhere, especially if they're Iranian citizens and they are known to have been VOA contributors, they're absolutely vulnerable to reprisals by the regime, and including things like kidnapping and being forcibly returned. So it's absolutely something I'm worried about. And to their points about what we would normally be doing in a time like this, planning for the safety of those people is one of the things we would normally be doing. We would be coordinating with our interagency colleagues in the State Department. We'd be talking to press freedom organizations. We'd be checking in with all of those people who have worked for us about their safety, about their plans, getting them funding if they needed it to go somewhere else. I just have no sense that anyone's doing it in America.